Okay, dear brothers and sisters of light, I wanted to do a live stream about divine feminine and divine masculine. This is oftentimes a misunderstood topic in which there's a lot of classes out there about the divine feminine and the divine masculine, but it's oftentimes convoluted or mixed up in terms of the way that it's taught. So I wanted to kind of get into this a little bit. If there's anybody that has questions, go ahead and type them in, and I'll try to answer them as best as possible. I'll try to keep this pretty short tonight. If you want to get more information about me, or if you want to get more information about my next class, because I'll be doing a longer class about this topic, for example, you can go to my website, www.soullearn.com, and subscribe. There's a subscribe button in the right hand side to my newsletter, and you'll get notifications about the divine feminine and the divine masculine. So let's get started. The first place that I'd want to start on this is that to keep in mind and remember that the soul is androgynous, meaning the soul basically has no gender. The soul itself is neutral. We only put gender on things based upon our human experience and here in the duality of 3D. So once you get beyond the duality of 3D, in other words, going to 4D, 5D, which is dimensions, which is a vibrational place, then the concept of duality and the concept of gender goes away. Now keep in mind that the beings that we call galactic beings, for example, the Pleiadians or the Arcturians, they're 5D and higher. They still do have gender, but it's not the same as what we call here on planet Earth. So one of the first things you pick when you come in as a soul, the first thing you pick is your gender. And there's a lot of confusion right now on the planet about gender. Some of this is done deliberately because there are dark forces that have been controlling us for many thousands of years, and they've inverted the concept of gender. The original concept of gender versus sexuality versus sexual preference. Gender itself has to do with biologically how were you incarnated into this world. Is it primarily with the penis or primarily with vagina? That would be determined biologically what your gender is, versus what we define now as sexual orientation. That's a completely different thing, and I'm not going to get into that. What I mostly want to talk about here is the energies, the cellular energies that you have within your body, and then also the universal energies. So let's first start with some of the concepts. You've probably heard some of these before, yin and yang. These are going back to Chinese philosophies and Chinese teachings. The yin energy is based upon the female energy. It has to do with the immaterial world, the inner. And so things coming from the yin come from inside outward into the material world, and the material world is thought of as the yang or the male. The other concepts of the yin are the yin is submissive. It's the left side of the body tied to the right brain because we're a dual hemisphere in our physical brains as well. So the left side is yin, the right side is yang, controlling the opposite sides of the brain. The qualities of yin are receptive, usually associated dark, moon, mysterious, passive, intuitive, and creative, and it's the inward energy. The symbol for pure yin energy, and keep in mind the concept is that all of us, regardless of your gender, we have both elements in us. We have a blend. And so that's part of the discovery of who you are, is discovering that blend of what you are in terms of yin and yang. So no matter what gender you associate with or that you identify with, you will have both elements in you, literally at a cellular level. If scientists could one day, which we will, get to the place where we can go in and identify the cells, there are going to be yin cells and yang cells, male and female cells, or yin and yang particles within the body. And again, this is mostly in the duality world of 3D. The symbol for yin in terms of the pure yin energy is a circle. The circle represents pure feminine, pure yin energy, which is a receptive energy. It's a drawing in energy. Those who have very strong yin energy, usually females, are some of the best managers on the planet because they're constantly bringing things in. When a project needs to be completed, they don't go outwards necessarily, they draw in. And so it has to do with managing, bringing things together, and the womb. The yang energy is of the material world, and the symbol for the yang energy is an arrow or a straight line. It's directive, it's leading, it's aggressive, it's destructive versus creative, which is the yin energy. And then the yang energy is procreative. It's usually associated with the light, with the sun, and as I said before, the right side of the body. And the energy is a drive that's always moving towards a goal, which is different than, again, the yin energy. Obviously, the yin energy is womb, and the male energy is the penis, which is a thrusting outward type energy. So again, keep in mind the yin energy is a receptive energy, drawing in. The yang energy is a drive energy, driving out. So the yin energy feminine starts at the inner and creates outward. The analogy that I was taught many, many years ago to try to remember the two energies is if you're trying to build a brick wall, okay? The cement is the yin energy, the bricks are the yang energy, and yet the two together, combined together, form the solidity of the wall. Depending upon the blend you have, if you're a bricklayer, you know these terms, but if depending upon the energies and the materials that you have, determines the strength and the solidity of that wall. And again, keep in mind these things exist only in 3D. Going into 4D, as you get into 4D, there's less duality. There is still duality, and there's that process of learning duality. Once we get to 5D, at that vibration, there really is no duality because the contrast is gone at that point. We are pure unity consciousness at that point. So that's essentially what I wanted to talk about. The biggest thing I wanted to talk about is that I see a lot of classes where either one or the other is taught. And I see a problem with this because I used to teach a lot of classes on relationships and these energies many years ago. And the ideal way to teach it is where you have a male and a female instructor, and I'll get into that in a minute. The way that it's normally taught today, and especially because the yin energy and the divine feminine is being very, very pushed very hard right now, which it needs to be because the masculine yang energy has been too dominant on this planet for far too long. And so the yin energy, the divine feminine energy, is trying to rise and be noticed and come to prominence, which it needs to. But the problem I see in some of these classes is that it's taught usually from a female perspective. It's usually about sensuality, feeling the body, getting into, you know, the divinity of the body. It's usually dancing, music, sensuality, feelings, sensations. And that's all fine. That needs to be taught as well, but there also needs to be understanding. The best way to teach this sort of a class is to have it as co-ed, to have a male and a female instructor. The female instructor would teach the females in the group, separate out the males, and vice versa. The male would teach the males in a group, and then they would come together, and then they would switch, and then the female would teach the males what she knows of the feminine side, and vice versa. The male would teach what he knows of the masculine side to the females. And then at the end of the class, they would wrap it up by having a pure co-ed discussion to have understanding. So the biggest thing that I find missing in some of these classes is that understanding, that knowing. It's usually only taught from one side or the other. And that's what I want to do, is I want to teach one of these classes amongst some other classes that I'll be bringing up. Again, if you want to subscribe, go to my website, SoulLearn, 2 words, soullearn.com, and hit the subscribe button, and you'll get notified of any future classes. And again, if anybody has any questions, go ahead and bring them up now, but that's primarily what I wanted to discuss. So the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway I wanted to bring is that we have both within us at this point. The emphasis is on the divine feminine and the divine masculine, but it should not be. It should really be on the divinity in you. You are divinity, and you're not defined by your masculinity or your femininity. You're defined by your soul and your sovereign being. And so that's the main point I wanted to take away with all this, is that we spend far too much time focusing on these things, which is fine. We have to know and we have to understand, and it's a worthwhile endeavor to do so. However, you need to be focusing on who you are as a divine being. As a divine being, it's just a knowing, it's a you. It's you are one and you are sovereign. You only picked this body and to come into this incarnation with, and that's important that you identify your traits and your characteristics. But beyond that, once you have those identified, the better way to know your true self, your sovereign self, is to disconnect from those. In other words, you become subjective at first, excuse me, meaning you analyze yourself as a person. My name is Hal. I identify as male. I'm a certain age. I was born in a certain country. I was born of a certain family. Once I've identified those traits in myself, you then want perspective, and so you want to step out of that and become objective and say, I'm not a name, I'm not a gender, I'm not even a human being. I'm a soul being. I'm a sovereign soul being. And through meditation and some other techniques, which I've taught in some of my other videos, you can learn how to do that. It entails being quiet, and entails coming into a space where you're just very, very quiet, centered with yourself, to be able to be in that space of who you really are. And so I don't want to discount learning about the divine feminine or the divine masculine. It's very important to learn those things. But then at another point, the next step, the next phase of evolution and to ascension is to detach from this physical body, meaning that you go inwards to discover your true self, your true divinity. Okay, so that's all I had for now. Does anybody have any questions at this time? And if not, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I'll put this up as a recording as well. And then again, if you want to subscribe to my newsletter so you can learn about some upcoming classes that I have, some of them are free, and you can attend and ask any kind of questions you wish. Again, go to my website, www.soullearn.com, and hit the subscribe button, and I'd be more than happy to send you some information about this. Okay, that's all I had for now, folks. I wanted to say have yourself a good evening or morning, whatever time of day it is on this big blue planet that you exist. And remember to be your greatest divine self. Be your greatest divine self. Don't focus on who you are in this body. Focus on who you truly are. And I wish you all the best. I love each and every one of you so very much, because you are divine. Okay, signing off for now. Bye-bye.